Disclaimer. We are two regular guys who love to talk Bone Thugs and Harmony. We do not represent Bone Thugs or any Bone affiliate. We are also not Bone Thugs experts. The views and information you hear in this podcast may be based on personal opinion. Please feel free to leave corrections and clarifying information in the comments. And enjoy. What's up, y'all? It's Beyond the Harmony, beyondtheharmony.com. I am Cecil West, back again for season 2 with the one and only,
the new and improved for season 2, Jonathan Lippy.
And this is Thug Thursday, the first Thug Thursday of 2019. We are pulling up on almost the 12-month marker. John, welcome back to Thug Thursday, buddy. It's been a nice break.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you know, I think a lot of people are saying, what kind of break did you guys go on other than stopping interviewing people every Thursday? Because we've had constant contact. We've actually probably dropped more stuff in the off season than we did during the regular season.
Well, there was a little moment. I think that there was a month or so where not much was going on, and then you syndicated a bunch of things, which kind of relit the fire under me, and yeah, we put out a lot of content, but I think that was good. That kept us sharp for this season. But that side content is stuff that we can work on at our leisure, whereas Thug Thursday is a every Thursday commitment to you guys. So it gave me a break. It let me recharge. I was pretty burned out by the end of the last season, but I'm really excited going into this season. We got great interviews lined up. Just some new. I'm pumped.
We left on a good note. We wrapped season 1 on a good note. Like season 1 felt complete right when we did it. It's not like it just jumped off a cliff and left you on a cliffhanger. It felt like what we set out to do with that season 1, our missions, our goals, we accomplished what we had wanted to do at that point. And it was time to take some time off and then rethink the mission, create new goals and objectives. And that's what this season 2 is all about.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're back to keep doing what we've been trying to do this whole time, which is just uncover the unknown. I can't say it more basic than, a lot of us have been fans for 20 years. They've been a group for 25 years. We know a lot about them, man. There's so many hardcore fans out there. Like, some of you fans know everything. So this show is about uncovering what we don't know. And that might be something minor. That could be something major. But that's what it's all about. If you guys have been paying attention, we've been dropping tons of questions of the day. I love the question of the day. We're really getting into some interesting ones now, Johnny, now that we've kind of got through the basics. What's your favorite album? What's your favorite song? We're getting to some crazy questions of the day. But even more crazy is what we're uncovering. It's a couple weeks ago now, but if you guys saw, we received a care package from Frank 216 DNA Level C, and it had just a bunch of cool shit in it, including a copy of Bone Enterprise that I didn't have in my collection, a version I didn't have. And then it also had Mr. Money Loke, which we know has a small bone connection because of the front of his album cover. And then the big one, Johnny, the uncovered possibility of it, at least the theory of a second Bone Enterprise album that was possibly going to drop around 90, looks like 96, called Sons of Assassins. And that's the only place inside of that Dre Bone, booklet, is the only place that I've ever seen that. And it may be the only place that it's ever been printed. That may be as far as they ever got with the album, was printing it in there. But how crazy is it to know that it was on the drawing board to put this second Bone Enterprise album out?
Not only that, using a catalog number with 1999 1999 in the catalog number, which didn't even sequentially follow the same scheme that they were doing. And it's too, I didn't say this in the video, but you notice that the first number is 7 on all of the catalog numbers, even dating back to the other albums that had nothing to do with Bone. And I'm just wondering if that had anything to do with like Seven Sign or their favorite number being 7 or anything like that. But I don't know. But seeing that 1999 in there for a Sons of Assassins, I wonder if we'll even find out what that could have been, would have been, should have been, what was supposed to be on it. Was it an album, an EP, a single? Who knows? But I think we may find it out in a future interview.
Well, I can tell you,
Cecil West.
Yeah, I can tell you that I've already done a little research. It's fun being who we are because I've made a lot of connections. I probably should be aiming at like connections besides Faces of Death, but I've made a hell of a lot of Stony Burke Faces of Death connections. So I was able to reach out quickly, and I'm going to do a full follow-up video on all of this. But this is what I can tell you guys. John in his video, was toying with the idea that maybe this was just them releasing a single, which made sense. In 96, you would have had the digital remaster release, so they could have been toying with a new single at that point, instead of the two that we knew as singles. So that was a good theory, but both people that I reached out to, and I'll release their names in the follow-up video, but they both worked very closely with Bone Enterprise, very closely with Stony Burke. One of them was actually still working with Stony Burke at the time that this was printed, and I can confirm that it was supposed to be a follow-up album. Now, it was described to me as, like one of those Lost albums, like when they released the Lost Tupac tapes or the Lost Nas tapes. So what I believe that this is if you remember, we heard K-Chill talk about those, unreleased songs that didn't get finished, because even Bobby Jones told us that they recorded a lot of stuff. So my guess is that this was a lot of unfinished, material, and that they were possibly going to continue to try to ride that wave that we know was created by the 95, 96 era. We had it confirmed for us that Faces of Death is a gold record. Kermit cashed in heavily there. So it looks like maybe they were going to try to continue to recash with a brand new album of unreleased old material. Now, a fan said to me that, and I cannot confirm this because I've never had anybody confirm this, but I've also never asked to have it confirmed or denied. But somebody said that they received a cease and desist, and that's why Faces of Death kind of slowed down, and that's probably why they had to stop this project. If that was the case, that would make sense. Who knows why it didn't see the light of day? But I can tell you, in season 2, we're digging for an answer, and I don't think there's a huge answer here. I think we're all right to say that there's probably not like an actual unreleased Sons of Assassins sitting somewhere in Cleveland, but I think it's worth us just digging into the idea of what it is, because again, this tells us that on that DAT tape that's sitting in K-Chill's basement or garage, wherever it is, that there are unreleased Bone songs that we've never heard.
It seems like there's more lost songs than found songs from all the people we've talked to now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds like there's more unreleased than released. They got more than Tupac buried somewhere. And another thing too that was interesting is it's in a way we even foreshadowed unintentionally, dating back to the Bone Enterprise video I made before we were Beyond the Harmony, when we examined the K-Chill. Actually, we were examining the Bone Enterprise album cover, because the format of the interiors match on all these Stony Burke releases. And even though the Dre Bone was on Stay True Records, it wasn't credited to Stony Burke or Jam It. It was credited to Stay True and some other label. It still had that same interior format with the current. It actually said current releases, right? It didn't say Feud coming soon.
Right.
It said Sons of Assassins current releases. And another strange thing too that I noticed was, and I always wondered this when you think back on the Easy Does It, Eazy-E album and Straight Outta Compton, there were songs on the Eazy-E album that have samples on the NWA album and vice versa. And you're like, how the heck, how could that be if they didn't come out at the same time, that, nothing came out simultaneously. And so in the Dre Bone album, it advertises the Mr. Moneyloke, and in the Mr. Moneyloke, it advertises the Dre Bone. And so you're like, well, how could two albums that came out at different times advertise each other? But then again, planning, if they did plan all of this ahead, you could do something like that.
I think they were planning. They probably planned that by the time Dre Bone had dropped out, that probably Bone Enterprise, would come out. I found out more interesting information about Dre Bone as well. I know that we've all been trying to connect. If there's a Dre Bone connection, we had it pointed out to us that Dre Bone is shouted out inside of the Creeping on a Come Up album. So maybe they were planning to ride that wave of putting out another Bone Enterprise album and then dropping an artist named Dre Bone, and that Bone Enterprise never came out, and that's why it was still printed inside. I don't know. We're going to find out. So appreciate everybody that has been, chiming in, helping us, listening to the songs, commenting, and just having fun with us. We're just having a lot of fun. But before we find that out, John, tonight, in just a few minutes, actually, we're going to have an interview. We were supposed to do this interview in the last season. Unfortunately, it didn't come together. But I'm really excited to do it because he's given massive contributions to our channel. As soon as he saw us, he started to contribute and help out. Tonight, in a few minutes, we're going to have Cairo Wolf calling in. He's done a ton of Bone Thugs artwork that I consider very important. Thug Stories that we know was kind of like the return, before the return, Strength and Loyalty, which was a huge record, and of course, Chasing the Devil by Crazy Bone. So we'll have him here in a few minutes, and I think we got some great questions. I always like when we have the artists on. We find out a lot of cool, information.
Yeah, and amazingly, sometimes you go in, you're thinking, all right, what can we possibly learn from an artist? But every single one of our artist interviews have been solid, like every single one. And I'm sure this one's going to be no different, especially with such a known and celebrated artist as Cairo Wolf, with his participation with the BTNH board and other Bone outlets. Like, I think he's like the people's champ artist that everybody's behind.
Yeah, I agree. He I know he was at least at one point like active on BTNH board. The GOAT from BTNH board, John Basil, he did a great interview back around Chasing the Devil time. That actually gave us a lot of information leading up to this, so he's been, involved with the Bone fans for a while, but I don't think that there's been much on him since Chasing the Devil. So I think that this is going to give us a real opportunity to kind of dig in further now that Chasing the Devil's been out for a little bit. And yeah, man, it's going to be good. We always find out, like you said, we always find out really good information from the artist. And I wasn't sure what we were going to have for questions, but I got like over 50 questions for him. And that's without the questions that he's going to inspire along the way. So I think it's going to be good, and we'll have him calling in probably any time here, Johnny, for our first interview of the season.
Absolutely. And, probably one of the art highlights was the Julio Costanzo giving us that background of the preparation and conceptual artwork and where all that came from. And it wasn't necessarily where we thought it came from. So that was unique as well. So we'll see what we find here. Also, I'll mention going back to this while we're waiting on Cairo, going back to the Sons of Assassins thing and our Faces of Death fetish that we have. It's a fun journey for me, at least, examining these albums like Dreybone and Mr. Moneyloke, and even that other Mr. Moneyloke album that didn't even really have much to do with Stony Brook, but it had Above the Law and it had Domino, and Above the Law, it used to be with Ruthless Records, and it was mentioning Laylaw, and so I think there's some connections there as well. But even going through it was like 3 months of K-Chill, releasing those K-Chill old songs, it was cool to hear the sounds of 93 when that happened, and observing the artwork and just hearing the production techniques, the types of beats, the types of flows. And I've even had fun looking into other Stony Brook / Jam It recordings artists like Southpaw. They're actually pretty good. A lot of these guys, if you're into like old school not really old school hip hop, but hip hop of the late 80s, early 90s, these guys actually had pretty solid releases. And it's just neat to see how the underground and independent artists are good, and we would never even known about these had this whole breadcrumb of trails, first from Bone Enterprise, leading us to K-Chill, leading us to all these other things, plus looking at these liner notes of these independent albums. Because, on an independent album, those thank yous are like more meaningful than corporate albums, because the corporate albums are just going to thank corporate people and industry folks, whereas these independent albums, you're getting like real. I'm not saying that the industry people aren't real people, but I'm talking, the people that are probably in your neighborhood. So this is a cool journey, and I do enjoy this old school stuff that we're doing, even though it seems strange. But look at where this leads, and what if we really find a Sons of Assassins album?
Well, John, with that, I believe we have Cairo here. Let's take a look. Cairo Wolf, you with us?
Yo.
Yeah, there he is. What's up, man? Thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Man, peace and blessings. I appreciate y'all having me.
So we were actually talking before you got on here that a couple years back you did a text interview with the GOAT from BT&H Board, and it was a really great interview where you covered a lot of information, so much information that the interview was so complete that I think we'll probably end up covering a little bit of that again. But I think it's a great story that you have, and I'm excited to cover it with our fan base. We do a lot. We were saying we do a lot of artists. Last season rather, we interviewed Aaron Purnell, who did like the Art of War 3 artwork, Julio Costanzo, who did Eternal and the Art of War, and even Jason Bibb, who did Faces of Death, which was their first album. So you're with great company being on Beyond the Harmony, Cairo.
Oh man, no doubt. Actually, Julio Costanzo was a big influence on me growing up. So, like, when I found that interview on YouTube, it popped up, on YouTube. It has little reference videos or suggestion videos. And that's how I found y'all. But
awesome.
I didn't know anything about the guy. When I saw it, I was like, oh, I got to listen to this. So that was really an amazing interview. I enjoyed listening to it.
I loved it. I love to hear that, to hear you say that like Julio was an inspiration for you, because there's an artist right now named Cody Hillier who does a lot for like Lazy Bone. He's doing the new Mothog.
I know Cody,
yeah, and he always says what an inspiration you are for him. So it's great to hear how all the artists that have worked kind of with Bone and have inspired each other, over time.
Absolutely, man. It's an interesting family.
So
we have a very interesting family in the Bone circle, man.
Oh yeah, and you guys have all helped collectively to make the visual piece. You know, the audio that Bohm makes is amazing, but the visual collective that has gone with it for the last 25 years has really helped build the story for all of us as fans. But before we get into that, I want to start right at the basics. You know, so we can establish it for the Beyond the Harmony listeners. When did you get your start? Like, you know, as an artist, I mean, you're so incredible. I feel like you must have been doing this just from the moment you were born.
Kind of. Both my parents are artists. My father did commercial art in the 70s, 80s, I think. But he's does like oil paintings, charcoal, things like that. But he's also a musician. And then my mother is a painter. She does watercolor and oils and acrylics. So I was kind of raised in an artistic environment, just growing up, and I always kind of naturally understood branding. You know, as a little child, I would like collect like the backboards to my action figures, or, you know, Happy Meal boxes. I remember Batman Returns came out, and McDonald's had like all the Batman Returns stuff, you know. So I actually collected like the French fry boxes and stuff with the Batman logo on it. I don't know, you know what I mean? It was just, I found it fascinating as a little person. But my older sister's first husband was a graphic artist, and we lived in Texas at the time, in Dallas, and he worked for a company called Lipcom, and they did all the packaging for this candy company. And so I was like 11, 12 years old, and I would go up to the office that he worked at, and he would just put me on the computer in the corner, and he'd like open up Photoshop and say, here, you know, play around, because I was always drawing pictures, and they did bubblegum CDs. They had these CDs back in the 90s. They were like discs of bubblegum that came in CD cases. You get them in like the dollar store and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was my first design project. I was like 11 or 12, and he just set me in front of a computer, and I'd just come up with ideas, you know. I never got paid for it, but that was my introduction to graphic design.
Wow.
And then, as the years went on, you know, I kind of just took it with me. I did a lot of fake album covers, like as a teenager. Like when I was like, you know, 13, 14, I would do like fake Cypress Hill album covers, or Bone, or, you know, whatever I was into. I would just do just like mock-up, just like fan art, I guess is what you would call it. But Cypress Hill is who made me want to do album covers. That Black Sunday album cover, like when I was a kid, blew my brain. And that's what said, oh, I want to do this. I want to make album covers.
It's crazy when we get inspired by something like young, and it shapes, you know, what we're gonna do with the rest of our life like that. Only a few select people in this world have the nerve to decide to chase the dream like that. So it's commendable that, you know, you got inspired by Cypress Hill, and now you make artwork for legends. How did you get the artist name Cairo Wolf? I mean, is that something that you've kind of had from the beginning, or how did that come about?
I've been Wolf since I was a teenager. Like, I used to be Wolf Child is what they called me when I was like 14, 15, 16. You know, as a kid, they called me Wolf Child. That's just what I went by. As I grew older, like the Cairo came when I changed the name of my company. I used to have a company called Ebtite Productions. And initially we did design work, we did T-shirts, we did photography, videos, and we had a studio. So we were doing like everything. So if you were an artist and you were trying to get your music known, you were trying to put your project together, you could come to Ebtite and we could record your project, master it, engineer it, do your music videos, do your T-shirts, do your album cover, do your everything you need all in one house.
Yeah, and you guys were like the one-stop shop.
Yeah, so, you know, I put this team together, and we kind of built a core here in Middle Tennessee and in the southern region of the United States. So I have people coming from Atlanta and Memphis and all over the place coming to work with us. And I kind of ran into some friction with some of the people I was working with, and I kind of felt like my name was unrecoverable at that point with the Ebtite Productions, which is what the SNL, the Strength and Loyalty Project, is under. So after that, I said, well, I need to change the name of my company. I changed it to Cairo Inc. I was just trying to think of cool names. And, I've always been a fan of the pyramids and the Egypt stuff. And so I said, oh, well, I'm just going to call it Cairo. And then eventually Cairo Wolf is just how people came to recognize me. So
I love it too, because it it kind of almost unintentionally links you to Bone with that Cairo and that that pyramid and that Egyptian link with the Mo Thug. So it kind of gives you that like cousin-esque link with that name. You had brought up strength and loyalty, and just working with Bone. Before you did the Bone, did you do any like real big gigs before that, or was Bone like the real big first gig you had?
Bone was definitely the first major gig. Before that, I'd done BG. I'd actually met Bone and them years before Strength and Loyalty. In 2002, they won the Grey Goose tour.
Yeah,
with Ball G and Little John. And at the time, I was down here living in the projects. I didn't have a car. I didn't even have any furniture in my house. Like, the literal only furniture in my house was like a glass coffee table and 2 lawn chairs and my Mac. I had like one of them old gym tone colored first iMacs. So
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, and I was doing design work. I had to figure out how to put diapers on my daughter. I didn't have any education. I didn't have any resources. I hadn't prepared myself to live a life or have a career. So my access to things were very limited. I didn't have any real education. I didn't know what I was doing. Like I said, I was living in the projects, hand to mouth, trying to figure out how to make, $50 a month. So I started doing, because I had this graphic skill I developed as a teenager via my former brother-in-law, I started doing album covers for local artists, just people I knew in the area, people who were trying to get on, and I was doing for like $50 a head or something like that. And I was literally in the hole. I couldn't really survive. I heard Bone was coming to town on the radio, and I was always a fan of them from when I was young. I was a huge fan of Bone, and I knew their story about how they met Easy, and he put them on. And I remember I was riding with a homeboy of mine, and it was on the radio that they were coming to town. And all my brain said was, they going to understand my situation, and I got to go get with them. So the lady I knew named Renee was doing some kind of DVD magazine thing back then. It never came out, but she always had some kind of scheme going on. She wanted me to come take pictures while she interviewed the artists at the Grey Goose tour. So we went up to the Grey Goose tour. I met Ball and G and Little John, and I had my portfolio with me, and I was trying to show, they were there to party and perform. They weren't really interested in me trying to pitch my services. But when Bone showed up, we got on the tour bus, and they did a little interview with the lady, and I had, I did the pictures, and then I had my portfolio with me, and I just kind of slid it to Lazy on the side, like, hey, here's some of my work, man. I'm a graphic designer, y'all need some artwork. And Lazy, he went through my portfolio, and he was like, man, this shit is hard. This shit is cold. And then he passed it around the tour bus, Crazy and Wish. Busy wasn't there. I think he had just left the group temporarily at that time.
Yeah.
And I got Lazy took a personal interest in what I was pitching, which was really impressive to me because, I had kind of ran into a bunch of brick walls. And he was like, yo, I want to bring you on and fuck with you. And he said he wanted me to do the Mo Thug 4 CD, which was, I think, I don't remember it had some subtitle, but it was the 4th volume of the Mo Thug stuff. So I got really excited because, again, bro, I'm living in the projects. I don't have no furniture. I don't even have a car. And I'm like, oh, I'm on. I didn't know nothing about the game. I was like 19 years old. I thought, oh, I've made it, in my brain, that, oh, I'm finna do this Mo Thug CD and I'm finna, get my stuff popping. And I went down to Atlanta. He was living in Atlanta at the time. We were in the studio. We chopped it up. We had a real good conversation and found out that we had spent some time in Euless, Texas at the same time when we was young. I think he was like 14. I think I might have been like 9. or 10 or something like that. But we were in the same small town in Texas at the same time, and he worked at the grocery store around the corner from where I lived. So, like, that was, like, a really cool connection. And me and Lazy just connected, man. Like, you know, he's just a really good dude, and we had a really good conversation. So, you know, we had started talking. He's talking about flying me to Cleveland to do the photo shoot. And then I hadn't talked to him in a couple of weeks. I was at the mall with a friend of mine, and there was a single out for the cover. It was, like, him and Felicia on the cover. I don't remember the name of the song, but I bought the single just because I was going to be doing the album cover. I opened it up, and inside the album cover was there. They didn't do it, so I got my feelings hurt. So I was like, damn, man, he didn't even tell me I wasn't doing it. So I called dude. He didn't answer his phone, so I left him a salty-ass voice message. Like, I was just like, you know, man, dog, fuck you. You ain't real. Like, blah. I mean, I was 19. You know, and I was probably drunk, but I left him a crazy-ass voicemail. The next day he called me back and said, you know, what's up with this salty message you left me? I was like, well, I'll tell you what's up. He's like, nah, man, I'll tell you what's up. So we got to do, like, this heated argument over the phone. Like, we threatened to kick each other's ass and all this bullshit. And in the middle of this ridiculous argument, I'm realizing that I've acted out of place and that I've overstepped, and it's like maybe I didn't fully understand the politics of the situation. And so I apologized to him before, you know, this thing went on for like 30 minutes. And before it was over, you know, I was like, you know what, man, I didn't understand what you're saying. Or I didn't understand where you were coming from. You know, I apologize. I was out of place. You know, I did all this comp work. 'Cause I did, like, I don't know, 9 or 10 different, like, mock-up, you know, not actual album covers, but just kind of concept art, you know. And
yeah,
said,
for
Mo
Thug?
Yeah, for the Mo Thug 4 stuff. I didn't, like, just, you know, rough concept ideas.
Yeah.
Sent to him, and I spent a lot of time doing it. He was like, well, look, man, you give me your address, and I'm going to FedEx you a check for all that stuff. But after that, I ain't fucking with you no more. And I told him, I was like, nah, because you ain't get the artwork, and you're not using it. I don't want your money like that. So, you know, I'm going to do my thing. You do your thing. And, you know, when I get on and I get situated, I'm going to buy you dinner. And he was like, bet. So we hung up the phone. And that was like in 2003. And I didn't talk to him again until 06, I think, when I ran back into him again. I ran into him at Vanderbilt at an event. And we talked then. But, yeah, so we had that little history before that. Yeah.
He must have remembered you when you ran back into him. What was that like with seeing him in person for the first time since that conversation? Because 2003, that would have been around the time of Mo Thugs 4, the movement.
Yeah, that's what the movement. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, and then you must not have run into him again until closer to around like the release of Thug Stories or leading up to Thug Stories.
It might have been 2005 when I ran into him again because I did the Thug Stories art. By the time I ran into him again, I'd already done the BG covers for Koch. I'd done like 2 or 3 of them for BG. By that time, I had built a company. I had a building, I had a staff, I had a team of people I was working with. I had won a couple of local design awards for the Southern Entertainment Awards. I won like Graphic Designer of the Year.
That's dope.
I built up like a notable name in, you know, the southeast region of the country at the time. So I felt like at the time that I was on. You know, I felt like I had arrived and I was doing big things and I had a lot of shit cooking. So when I ran into him again at this event, I was excited because I had proven myself. You know, I had come up, you know what I'm saying? I told him, I said, I'm going to come up on my own. When I do, I'm going to buy you dinner. So when I seen him at the event, I saw him from a distance and I was like, well, you know, I should go holler at him. But he came and hollered at me. He noticed me. And he came and hollered at me. He did remember me. Lazy got a hell of a memory. Like, out of all the people in all my life, like, Lazy's memory is ironclad. Like, that dude, he remembered my daughter. She was like a newborn when I met him the first time. And he asked me, he's like, how's your daughter doing? You know what I mean? Like, he remembered things that you wouldn't think someone who has met so many people and done so many things, you know, the insignificant meeting that we had, I was surprised that he had remembered as much about me personally. And after that, we went back, kicked it at the hotel room. I told him I was doing the BG cover. He had the BG album with him. He pulled it out of his suitcase or out of his bag. He was like, "You did this?" I was like, "Yeah, I did
dope.
that." And he was like, "Oh man, that's the shit." So we kicked it and hung out and smoked some, and it was just a cool shit. But we left it there. We didn't try to. I intentionally didn't try to like border for more work. I was like content with the fact I'd shown him I was on. I told him, I said, "Dude, I told you I'm gonna buy you dinner." And, of course, he didn't want nothing to eat. He was like, "No, I'm good, man, whatever." I said, "Well, one day I'm going to get you," you know what I mean? And then because of the relationship with Koch through working on the Chopper City BG projects, Koch called me and were like, "Yo, we got this Bone album coming out. Are you interested in doing it?" I was like, "Fuck right. Hell yeah."
Yeah.
So that's why I did Thug Stories project. And the Thug Stories project was difficult because we didn't have any pictures to use. They couldn't use pictures.
I remember reading that, and that you had very limited, they were like Polaroids that were poorly scanned, and that's really all you had to use in that situation. What was the reason behind that they didn't have like a shoot or anything that they could use at that point?
They had to deal with Interscope, and Interscope was, I guess, real nervous about the shit. And I guess they were trying to hit a lick on the side before the Interscope album. So Steve LaBelle had called me, and he was like, "Look, we can't do a photo shoot because, whatever the fuck. We can't do a photo shoot because they're under contract with Ruthless or under contract with Interscope. So, I'm just going to send you some pictures." And I was like, "Okay." And he sent me this, like, handful of, like, scanned or, it's like snapshots on tour, like, like disposable camera style or Polaroids.
Oh, man.
And I was really disappointed because they weren't even good Polaroids. I was like, man, these are not great pictures. So I had to improvise. And I was still pretty young in the game, like, I thought more of myself than I probably should have because I'm pretty much self-taught. So, I didn't have the skill level I should have at the time or that I believe that I had because I kind of drank some of my own Kool-Aid as far as like, the local environment is like, "Oh, you're the man. So I drank a lot of my own Kool-Aid. So I thought more of my skills than I probably should have. But, either way, there were no pictures available except for these terrible pictures. And I think dude up at Koch, I don't remember his name. It was Paul Grosso was the head of the art department at Koch. He took a picture of Lazy because I didn't have any pictures of Lazy to use for the cover. He took a picture up there at Koch of Lazy and sent it to me. And so that was the only picture I had taken for that project. So I had to kind of improvise. But it was cool, It was a cool experience.
Did that like affect that hinder the final product compared to like what you kind of had in mind for that Thug Stories for that artwork? Just not having like photos to work with.
I wanted to do something really impressive, and like being that, Julio Costanzo was an influence of mine. I was a Bone fan growing up. A lot of their art, along with Cypress Hill and some other people really influenced, my taste in art and their brand. So I had things I really wanted to do and show out, and I felt I was kind of hindered. I felt like I was kind of handicapped from doing something awesome. But, we did it, and, they loved it. Koch loved it. Lazy loved it. Lazy came to town after the Thug Stories came out. He came to town, and they did a show, and my group opened up for him, and then we hung out a little bit afterwards. Powder was there.
Oh, wow.
And Lazy had told me, he's like, "Oh, man, you did an awesome job with that, with the Thug Stories, man. I love that, bro. I'm going to get you this Interscope album." And I didn't necessarily take it to heart just because, the politics of the game. I learned a lot more then about, like, how the game works and how budgets work. And, I was like, all right, cool. But, due to prior conversations with Steve LaBelle, I felt like that probably wasn't happening. I mean, Steve told me it wasn't going to happen. I talked to Steve on the phone, and Steve pretty much said, "Look, bro, you're not doing the Interscope record. Stay over at Koch and get your bread." And I was like,
what was the reason that was kind of given that you wouldn't be doing Strength and Loyalty?
I mean, probably because I wasn't seasoned veteran at the time. When they went to Interscope, they were trying to, it was supposed to be their comeback album, and they were trying to work with the best. Like, they were trying to, musically and artistically, they were going all out. Like, Interscope really put a budget out there for them. I mean, they maxed that motherfucking budget to the wall.
Oh, yeah.
They ran with it. But, Steve had told me, because Lazy told me to call Steve. And me and Steve had kind of a funny history anyway, prior to that. Me and him had got into a couple of different arguments and shit. And, when I was young, I was very difficult to work with because I was very ignorant of the way the industry works. I was very ignorant of just the politics of the game. And inside of that, me and Steve had a couple of run-ins. Not like we didn't beef it out. We just had a couple of different disputes. And so I think Steve already had kind of a bad taste in his mouth for me. And I was kind of belligerent in my ignorance. I had all these ideas, but I didn't really know the politics of executing them. So, Lazy told me to call Steve. He said, call Steve about it. So I called Steve. Steve was like, look, bro, dope, did a great job with Thug Story. Stay with Koch, get your bread. You're not going to do the Strength and Loyalty. You're not, well, at the time, it didn't even have a title. He said, you're not going to do the Interscope album. So I was like, all right, well, that's fine. Keep it moving. And then Steve's actually the one who called me and told me I was doing the Strength and Loyalty project. And from what I understand, that's on Lazy's word. Like, Lazy looked out for me. Like, Lazy, he went to bat and made sure I got to do that project, which, again, changed my entire life. From the bottom up.
And you feel as if doing that Thug Stories album and I mean, even though it wasn't what you wanted, I mean, you said Lazy was really happy with it. I mean, you feel like that's kind of what secured you that Strength and Loyalty cover in the end?
I think so. Yeah, I would think so, because that was the first time I'd done something for them. I think also, originally it was supposed to be a 2-panel album, it opens up one time, just or 4-panel, rather. It's a 4-panel fold. And because of the information or whatever, it was going to be crammed. And Koch said they didn't have any more money in the budget to give me. And I'm like, I don't care. I'll do the extra 2 or 3 panels or whatever so we have room.
Yeah.
And Koch was really happy about that. So they got a bigger package than, what the budget allowed for. And just off the strength of, the prior situation with Lay, I kind of felt like, I'm trying to, like a token of homage or whatever. I wanted to extend that extra foot. And I turned around and did the exact same thing on Strength and Loyalty.
So, okay, so before we move into the Strength and Loyalty then, because I do got a couple Thug Stories questions, because that album, like you said, it kind of happened right before they dropped their major return. And that was the big, I mean, I wouldn't say the big, but that was the return before the return. And of course, like you said, it was on Koch, it was independent. Of course, there was pressure for you just doing it because it was a Bone record. Did you think about the fact that this was their first release since Thug World Order? I mean, did that add any extra pressure to you to make sure that this was great? Because we hadn't, up to that point, we hadn't heard from Bone in a real long time. This was going to be the first thing we heard and saw from Bone in years.
Yeah. Right. No, absolutely. Because, I absolutely feel like that. And that's all the more reason I was disappointed we couldn't have a good photo shoot. I was, I was kind of put in a corner and just had to make something from nothing, and when you're doing industry album or release projects, you can't just use Google Images. You have copyright issues and things like that, So whereas when I was doing a lot of mixtapes, a lot of underground stuff, I could just go to Google Images and just get whatever images I wanted to flush things out. You can't do that with real releases. So I was kind of pinched into a corner where I didn't really have any. In fact, the back of the CD, there's a picture of an old car. This old, I don't remember if it was a Chevelle. I don't remember what it was. It was like an old car. My homie T-Mac gave me that picture. He came over and brought a bunch of pictures he took with an infrared film. And I just saw the back of that car, and I was like, hey, is it cool if I use this? He's like, I don't care. So that's what I used for the back of the album because we didn't have anything to use back there.
That's dope. I was going to ask you about the significance of the car because I noticed that all the Bone artwork that you've done, the three major covers, and I don't know if you noticed this, but they all have like a car that's prominent in all your artwork for Bone.
I have never noticed that.
Yeah, all of it.
I've never thought about that.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you about that car, and I've had other artists tell me that you gotta that there is the rules around what you're using. So I know without having the photos, that must have made it almost extra impossible. But you did do a lot of I guess out of the box. Like I noticed at the bottom that there's almost like three stick figures. It looks like maybe a Grim Reaper, an Angel, and like an Axeman. On the front cover. Can you explain what where that came about? Like what made you decide to do that?
I mean, probably indirectly inspired by the Art of War. The Art of War, they had the skeletons with the weapons and shit. And, their stuff was very mystical and otherworldly, especially in the 90s. And that's something that I kind of miss from them because, after Art of War, their whole image started to change. They started wearing like bright colored matching jerseys and they started, after Art of War, like their brand started, like their actual image and brand started to kind of change. And I personally wasn't a fan of like where they were going. And I was kind of confused by it. I was like, well, what are y'all like? How do you go from Art of War to, doing some of the stuff y'all are doing visually? So I wanted to kind of create a callback to the East 99 Art of War, the old Bone. I wanted to kind of bring that callback, and I wasn't sure how to do it. I just got a Wacom tablet, so I was just playing with, drawing on my Wacom tablet. And I did the little stick figure-esque characters. I tried to make it kind of vibey and kind of old and almost biblical looking. I think there's like some Hebrew text, like there's Hebrew pages of the Hebrew, the Torah that I overlaid over the images and stuff. I just tried to imply that old feeling that they had.
Yeah, that was one of the questions actually that when I put up that we were doing this interview, that was one of the things that fans wanted to know. They had made note that there was some sort of Arabic, Hebrew letters, and even a newspaper article, and they wanted to know if that was just something that was stock or if there was something significant, because we know in Bone artwork so many things have been hidden over time. The fans didn't know if that was significant or if that was just like a stock thing or if those letters actually said something.
No, I mean, they're part of the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, which is the Old Testament of the Bible. I actually went to the public library and found a Hebrew to English copy of the Torah. So, on one page it would be Hebrew, on one page it would be English. It was kind of, I don't know if it was some kind of educational but it's at the public library. I just went and found anything I could find with Hebrew lettering on it, and it was the Torah, and I knew that the scriptures and stuff were pretty relevant to their image and their brand. So I got that book from the library. I scanned it, and I don't know, I scanned 4 or 5 pages out of there, and I just used it as overlay, as like a feel.
Was that the same situation on Strength and Loyalty? There was also some kind of like Hebrew or something like around the front and under the disc. Was that the same? Was that the same thing?
No, the Strength and Loyalty, and this is kind of funny because it's a tad bit embarrassing because I didn't realize what I was doing. I had found this font, and I don't remember the name of the font, but there was a font I'd found, and it looked cool and it looked mystical. And I think like on the cover there's that circle and it's behind the disc, and it's like, to me it looked cool and it looked mystical, and it's just their names. I think it just says like Lazy, Crazy, Busy, Wish, and Flesh in this font.
Oh shit.
And the it ended up being like either similar or the same font as they used on Lord of the Rings, which was not intentional. I wasn't thinking of Lord of the Rings when I did it, but after it came out, people were like, why they got Lord of the Rings text on here? And I'm not a Lord of the Rings fan, so I wasn't up on game, you know, and then I was like,
Oh, that's still crazy to hear. Like, that's the stuff as fans. Like, even though it ended up being the Lord of the Rings thing. Like, I could give a shit less about that. Honestly, I love hearing that text actually meant something, and that you said that it may have even said like Busy Bone and Flesh aren't on this album, but if that says Crazy, Lazy, Busy, Wish, and Flesh on the front, like that's crazy to know that homage to the whole group was still in there. So.
Well,
That's
to me,
awesome to
I
hear.
knew no one. Well, to me, I knew no one would know that but me, because I mean, if like the group or Steve LaBelle had known that, they would have thrown a fit. But like to me, I felt personally like I wanted to include Busy and Flesh in it. No one can read it. It's not legible. It's not actual letters. It's just it's iconography. Yeah. So you know what I mean. So for me, it was my personal way of putting something in there, for a bigger thing.
Yeah.
But even like I wasn't hip on Lord of the Rings like that. But when people started, I saw some of the feedback about it, and people were saying, "Why well, they got the Lord of the Rings text?" And I was like, "Oh man, that's But it was what it was.
Yeah, Bone fans are we are a rare breed. Like we pick out every single thing, so they see that stuff quick. But the Strength and Loyalty is one of my favorite covers that Bone has. I really, I guess, enjoy the contrast. I like that they were wearing the white on the front, so I've always liked that. Moving into that album, you had said that Lazy was like who really pitched for you to end up getting that. When you locked it down, how did the concept come up? I mean, was this something that you had to work closely with the label or Bone, or was this pretty much like dumped into your lap and you were told just make it happen?
Well, it was a crash course in working with the majors. I'd never worked with the majors. I was kind of in over my head, and I didn't really fully understand what I signed up for. Like, technically, I was contracted as art director. So I had a thought in my brain that meant I'm going to creatively control the visual brand of this album. And I had a bunch of ideas that I wanted to do. When I started talking to the Interscope staff about the project, I realized I was kind of at odds because we had different visions. I had pictured something more in the lines of, like, if you remember the early G-Unit artwork.
Yeah.
Like the early, if you think of like the G-Unit's first group album, the Beg for Mercy record, I had pictured something more like that visually. I in my brain, like when we did the creative call with Interscope, I think the stylist was on the phone, China. Jonathan Mannion was on the phone. He's the photographer. He's a phenomenal photographer. Jonathan Mannion has done everybody. He did all of Jay-Z's covers. He did DMX covers. He done Afeni Shakur. Like, Jonathan Mannion is world renowned. Like, he's a phenomenal world class photographer. And I was excited to be working with him. And I was like really excited, so I started pitching all these ideas I wanted to bring to the table, and they all kind of got shot down. Like, I'd picture something very dark and gloomy. I'd picture them in like Dickies and Chucks and Lokes and like an abandoned house kind of feel. That's where I was kind of leaning towards. I originally wanted like an abandoned house in Cleveland with like candles lit and them in all black with some Lokes. I was thinking a real East 99 vibe. That's where I was at in my brain.
Yeah.
And Interscope like shut me down. They were like, no, we want like Babe and the Apes, and we want to bring them into whatever. And I'm like, well, this isn't Bone's brand. Like, we're working with Jonathan Mannion. We got like one of the best photographers on the planet. I've been following their career since I was a child, you know, from the style and the branding aspect from the art. And I had a very precise vision I wanted to execute. And Interscope pretty much took that and said, no, we're not doing any of that. Which was kind of frustrating because I was like, you know, I'm contracted as art director, but nobody was really taking my art direction. So we went into, they left all the locations up to Jonathan Mannion, and he did a good job. We went up there, I think it was September of 2006. We went to Cleveland to do the photo shoot. I came into town. That photo shoot was insane. I'd never seen it. I'd never been a part of anything that big before because, I mean, again, Jonathan Mannion's world class, and he had a dope team with him. And they had scouted, I don't know how many locations. I mean, it was insane. The photo shoot went from 6 a.m. till I think 4 a.m. the next morning, like nonstop. Wow. We had to be on location on East 99 in St. Clair. The corner is where we started at like 6 a.m. And there was a legion of people out there. I mean, there had to be 100 people that came out. And so we started off in the morning on the corner of East 99 and St. Clair, and we worked our way all the way down St. Clair. We went to like a garage. We went to like a parking lot. We went to the Cleveland Indians Stadium.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a long photo shoot, man. That thing, I mean, I think we probably got 5,000 or 10,000 pictures.
Yeah, it's amazing. You sent me a lot of them. And it was incredible to just see how much, you know, shooting that was done for it. Now, I just want to make sure, I'm just going to back up a small step. Did you go 2 different times? Did you do the photo shoot, and then were you also on location for the I Tried video shoot? It looked like there was a lot of photos done then as well.
Yeah, I was at both of those shoots. The I Tried video we did in February of 2007. Well, see, the album was supposed to come out in December. Or no, the album was originally supposed to come out in November of 2006. So we did the photo shoot in September of 2006, and I was thinking I was gonna have, you know, a month to work on this shit, and they kept pushing the album back. It went from November to December, and then it got pushed back to February, and it got pushed back to March, and then got pushed back to April, and then I think it eventually came out in June or July, something like that. But I mean, it got pushed back a whole lot. And in February of 2007 is when we went to do the I Tried video. Me and my man Big Fella went up there for that. We get into town. Akon's there the first night. We're on location. They shoot, like, all the shots with Akon were shot that night when we first get into town. And during over the night time, a blizzard came through, and it was like the worst blizzard since 1972 or something crazy. It was like negative 23 degrees. It was insane. So we got snowed in this hotel with Bone and their homies, and it was really crazy. And then we had to go out and shoot in the snow. And like when we were on location shooting the I Tried video, it was literally negative 20 degrees outside, and the snow was like waist high.
Wow. Was there a reason that? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, was there a reason? I mean, obviously having you on location for the photo shoot that was going to be in the album made sense. Was there a particular request or reason that they wanted you on location for, you know, the video shoot as well?
For professionally, nah, I don't think so. I think Lazy just said, "Hey, man, we're shooting a video. If you want to come up, come on." So, you know, I hollered at my homie, and we just hopped in the car and drove up to Cleveland. I mean, I think it's a 9-hour drive from here.
Wow.
So we just drove up to be a part of the process, and it was it was crazy, man. It was like
Yeah.
the snow was insane. We got trapped. We were only supposed to be there for, I think, like 3 or 4 days, and we ended up being trapped up there for a whole week. We couldn't even leave. The interstates were shut down. They were originally shooting the I Tried movie there in Cleveland. And because of the snow, they had to shut down and move production to Los Angeles. So originally the I Tried movie was them never coming to L.A. It was supposed to be them, you know, they never made it to L.A. and they all grew up in Cleveland. The whole movie was supposed to take place in Cleveland. And I was actually in the movie because they shot part of it while we were there shooting I Tried video.
Oh,
they actually shot part of the movie. I didn't have a talking part, but I was in a couple of the scenes in the background. They were shooting it. Like I said, we were trapped there for a week. But it was too expensive. Nobody could work. The snow, everything was shut down. So they just shut down the set and relocated to L.A. and did the whole thing out there. But originally it was being shot in Cleveland.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, you had mentioned just being snowed in and you know, just a lot of Bones homies around. You sent me so many photos. I've shared a lot of them with the Beyond the Harmony audience in 2 different videos that we've put up. And you know, during that shoot, we actually saw that Bone had some reunions with former Mo Thug, Soulja Boy, and even during the I believe the actual photo shoot, Mo Hart was there.
Right.
And we even saw an original Band-Aid Boys member named K Chill was in some of the photos. So it's like, it seemed like everybody was turning out. You know, being in the mix of that, it just must have been energy through the roof. I mean, Cleveland must have been just, you know, on fire to know that Bone was back, and especially thinking about that time, you know, they hadn't been doing much. So gearing up for this album, and you guys are running around the city doing all these photos. It just must have been a huge buzz for you guys. I wanted to know, you had mentioned that when they were taking the photos, did they request any like input from you as like an artist as to like what kind of photos they should have, or did they just kind of shoot and then you just kind of get the photos after?
Well, I mean, that's kind of funny because like during the shoot, I mean, wanted to speak on the Mo Thug members. Like I was a fan of the Mo Thug stuff, especially the first album. The second album was cool, but the first Mo Thug album I was a huge fan of as a teenager. I think it was like 13, 14 when that shit came out.
Yeah.
And that, you know, I mean, that was a huge impact on my life because of like the lifestyle I lived and, you know, my circumstances. That album in particular was a huge impact on my personal life. And I was a fan of like the Soulja Boys and the Hustlers and the Graveyard Shift. Like those were people I was real fans of. So to get to when I got there, when they showed up on set, I was like, oh snap. I didn't even recognize Soulja Boy. I think somebody called his name. Somebody was like, Soulja Boy. And I turned around and I was like, oh, that's Soulja Boy. Oh, okay, cool. And I started seeing all these Mo Thug members show up, these ex-people show up. And it was, I mean, I'm standing on East 99 in St. Clair, and I'm there with Bone, and I'm there, you know, some of the Mo Thug members. It was like, you know, as a person who grew up looking up to them and, you know, them having so much influence on my brain as a young person, it was really kind of magical. It was like, man, I'm on East 99 in St. Clair with Bone. And, you know, it was like a real kind of surreal experience, you know. Yeah. But I had assumed that they brought me up to contribute artistically, being that I'm the so-called creative director, which is what's on my contract. I had assumed that, you know, I was there to have my input. And when I was young, I was very outgoing and outspoken. So I never like really held my tongue. I was very kind of belligerent in like my ideas, and I think I just annoyed everybody because I was like trying to like work with Jonathan Mann, who's a legend. I mean, Jonathan Mann at this point is like, you know, he just flown back from Paris or somewhere shooting Tyra Banks and shit. You know what I mean? So, you know, I think they thought, who is this kid? I was young as hell. I think I was like 22, 23, something like that. I was young, I was hungry, I was broke, and I had a bunch of ideas, and I'm thinking, I'm here, let's shoot like this, let's shoot like that, let's get this angle. And, you know, people were kind of just brushing me off, like, yeah, okay, dude. I'm like, all right, man. I'm like, hey, man, let's get this alley shot right here, like, you know, and they were like, yeah, okay, man, that's cool, you know. And the whole process was like really awesome and kind of disappointing at the same time because, I mean, I didn't really need to be there. That no one really wanted my input. And I think I just rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Just because, again, I didn't understand the politics of the situation. I didn't know what I was in. I had a misunderstanding of my role because of creative director implied to me I was going to be like overseeing the creative process. So I think I kind of annoyed people more than anything. But it was still like a really cool experience. I'd never been on something that big. And like when I say that big, even to this day, I've never been on a photo shoot that was that elaborate. I mean, we set up shop and broke down shop and reset up shop and broke down shop. I mean, it had to be 30 times. I mean, the wardrobe, there was one thing that I absolutely threw a fit about. And I mean, it's silly now, but China, who was there as a girl, I think she was from New York. She was the stylist for the project. And she had all these clothes that she had got for them. And there was one point she wanted to put them in these like really shiny gold hoodies that had like rhinestones all over them. It was like totally off-brand for Bone Thugs. It was like some real, they were like bright, shiny, it's like some shit Puffy would wear. It was like, you wouldn't want to see Bone in like shiny gold hoodies with like rhinestones all over them. And I remember they came off the wardrobe trailer wearing these shiny gold hoodies. And I just kind of like, yo, no. We can't do, I mean, I remember arguing with somebody there on the set, like, yo, this is Bone, man. What are y'all doing? You know? And they didn't do those pictures. They, you know, they changed, I think they put on those white hoodies is what they ended up putting on. Originally, they were like super gold hoodies. Yeah.
Yeah, I like those white hoodies. I at least like that they were wearing like white on the front. On the front of the cover, I thought that was something kind of just new and different. I didn't like, and I know what you're talking about. Around that time, they were kind of just trying a little bit of different shit. Like I even noticed, I can't remember which picture, but like they were wearing the white hoodies, and even one of those white hoodies had like black rhinestone like skulls on it. So they were kind of pushing that different feel. And this was different for us as fans too, to kind of see, I guess, the commercialized Bone, because we were so used to them either with Ruthless or, you know, I guess going by themselves. Full Surface being a major label, it was a really different thing. It must have been really different for you as well. You had mentioned like the submission for Koch. They were really happy with the artwork. Everything, went fine there. When you submitted the initial artwork for Strength and Loyalty, what was that like? Was that process really different? I mean, did they reject a lot of it, or I mean, did a lot of your stuff just immediately get through?
Well, no, it was, initially they said, okay, photo shoot's done, and then they're going to send me the contact sheets, which is what I sent y'all a few of those. They sent me these contact sheets, man. I mean, this thing was like, 3 inches thick of just contact sheets.
Amazing.
It had to be like 10,000 pictures, and they're like, go through the contact sheets, select the ones you want, and then send us the numbers, and then, we'll send you the actual high-resolution photographs. I was like, oh, fuck yeah. So I got the contact sheets in the mail. I go through the contact sheets, and I mean, I'll probably pick like 100 pictures. To choose from, because my creative process usually is, I kind of pick a lot of things, and then I develop some different comps.
Cairo, you still with me? Oh, I think we lost Cairo. Probably momentarily. I'm sure we'll get him to call back in here, John.
Yeah.
Well, we have him off though. I'm loving this. I'm loving this interview. This is it's actually kind of nice that he dropped off, because I'm sure he's about to call back in, and it gives me a little break, because man, it always is so much more than I expect. Especially, I mean, how good is Kyra Wolf's story so far, bro? Like, so much more than I expected.
This is, yeah, I'm sitting back the same. It's like everything I wanted to hear, I'm hearing. Especially, I mean, I really loved hearing about the Torah being put in the background of both of these covers, and a couple of those other things about these covers, especially the back with the car, and it's just bringing this artwork to life. Actually getting to hear it from the artist that did it. It's definitely.
I think we got him back here. Let's see. Cairo, you back with us?
I am, man. Sorry, we got interrupted.
Oh, it's all good. You were just saying something about that. I believe you were saying something like you make a lot of maybe proofs or like mock-ups, and you got cut off.
Got you. So yeah, like I would say my normal process would be, I take a handful of prime pictures and then I work up different comps for submission. And when I sent Interscope all my selections, they directly emailed me back and they were like, no. Like, Jonathan Mannion charges us X amount of dollars for each photo. So you can't do this. What you're going to do is you're going to scan the little pictures that you have, the contact sheets, and make a really crappy copy of what you think the cover should be. And then once that gets approved, we'll send you the real one, the real photo, and then you can remake it in high resolution. And that totally shot me in the foot creatively, because I felt immediately caged. Like, well, shit, so then I just started scanning like the little low ones and trying to submit them. But then, I mean, like, they're so small. Even with a high resolution scan, they're blurry and fuzzy, and it's like you can't really get a good idea of the album cover.
And for people listening that have never done anything like this, when you take a picture and you digitally stretch it and then you try to work with it, the pixels are completely blown out. It makes it very difficult to just work with. So to try to produce something and say this is what it's going to look like, there's no way to really produce something and say it's going to look like this and feel good about it with something stretched and blurred and looking so poor.
Exactly. There's no way to make it look good. I mean, you get the general idea of what I'm thinking, but there's no way to make it look good. So I felt immediately constrained by that. And then, but I went through, did the contact sheets. I think we ended up, whatever pictures are in the booklet is the pictures they ended up approving. The original, I think I did like 3 or 4 original comps for it. They picked the one with the 3 of them in the white hoodies. The one I liked had all of them had their heads down, like they were looking down, like almost in like prayer kind of. They kind of like they were praying. That's the one I liked better, but I guess Interscope had felt differently. They were like, no, we need their faces. They're looking down. They need to be looking at the camera. So Interscope picked that picture that's on the cover. The Crazy Bone was from a different picture. We had to cut it in there, I think. I think I had to cut the Crazy Bone in that shot. So, I mean, like I said, it was a huge learning curve. I was learning a whole lot of stuff, working with the majors for the first time. It was an interesting process, man. It was a creative definitely a creative learning curve for me, and like how they put these projects together.
Yeah, I actually, I believe I have a copy of one of those. John, my co-host, just sent it to me in the chat, and I can see it. It's Lazy Bone kind of looking down. It almost looks a lot like the current cover, but they're in a different pose. And I actually really like that one as well. Something I wanted to say to you too, and we kind of just got off track, but I thought it was really interesting that you had initially wanted the cover to kind of look like the G Unit, the Beg for Mercy, because I've always thought that Beg for Mercy borrowed its concept from Creeping on a Come Up, because Tony Yayo was in jail and they put him on the building. And of course, Flesh and Bone wasn't there. So I thought that was really crazy that that G-Unit was the inspiration, because I think that they totally use Creeping on a Come Up as their inspiration there.
Yeah, probably so. What I also learned during, my time in the industry is once you get past the independent, local, underground level, most of the time the artists themselves don't have shit to do with their creative, with their image or like what their album covers are like. They approve them. Of course, the artists usually say, yeah, I like this one or not. But the creative process doesn't really have anything to do with the group. And that's what I learned working on Strength and Loyalty, and it was confirmed through working on other projects throughout, my career. But, learning that was kind of disappointing. It was kind of like you find out that, it's like listening to the interview with Julio Costanzo, It's like, Bone didn't have anything to do with the creative process on those album covers. They just, they got shown them and they said thumbs up and kept it moving. And a lot of the things that I loved about them growing up with a lot of things that didn't have anything to do with them, like the don't give props to the devil stuff, like the hidden stuff, and like all that stuff influenced my own work. Like I hide stuff in my artwork all the time. There's a couple of hidden things in the Bone, in the Strength and Loyalty, and in the Thug Stories project. I hid. I think there's a Grim Reaper somewhere in the Strength and Loyalty. Like there's where they're sitting on East 99 in St. Clair, Crazy Bone sitting in the forefront. Like there's like a light switch or something behind him. I don't remember. I have to go look. But there's like a Grim Reaper hidden in there somewhere.
Shit.
On the back of it, there's like a skull hidden somewhere in there. So I was influenced by, Julio Costanzo's, work and like, using the platform to like hide messages. And one of the big things I was drawn to, or that I loved about Bone's album covers, was there was always all this hidden cool shit, that you had to go, it was like an Easter egg hunt, you had to go like find, and like Easy sitting in the cover of East 99 up there in the corner.
Yeah.
When I first noticed that as a teenager, like that shit blew my brain. I was like, oh, snap.
Beyond the harmony for the fans, we celebrate. Uploading new videos every Thursday, so join us. Beyond the harmony for the fans, we celebrate. Uploading new videos every Thursday, so join us. Beyond the harmony for the fans, we celebrate. Uploading new videos every Thursday, so join us. Beyond the harmony for the fans, we celebrate.